you teach an aggressive kid that it's beneath his dignity to bully someone weaker. So you can attach that right to the competitiveness. It's like, you're a loser. You bully someone weaker than you, you're a loser. That's pathetic.
Yes.
It's like it speaks right to that competitive drive. It says, I don't want to be a loser.
Tenets of martial arts are so critical. I mean, that's one of the major tenets of martial arts. You know, this is it is a huge part of what's taught in traditional martial arts academies. Is there's a very clear way of behaving, and you're never supposed to do anything remotely like bullying.
Right.
And you're supposed to have
because it's a misuse of your power.
Exactly. And you're supposed to have extreme reverence for the people who taught you. I mean, your master. You literally call them a master.
Right.
You know, in almost all martial arts, they're referred
right,
to.
and so that's
another.
so that's another thing that's really interesting about a functional hierarchy. Is like, because the leftist critics look at a hierarchy and they think every position is up looking down, right? But what you're saying, what you're pointing out is, no, in a functional hierarchy, there's plenty of respect going up. Right.
Yes.
So it's not just power. It's like it's power. It's authority and subordination at the same time. Voluntary subordination, because you should be properly subordinate to the people who are better at what you're doing.
So this is where competition is so important, because the person that has a background in competition, has been involved in competition, sees a person who's busted their ass and become something really extraordinary, and it's incredibly inspirational. And you look to those people and you want to read their biographies, and you want to watch documentaries on them, because it literally gives you fuel. Whereas the person who shies away from competition, is afraid of their own insecurities and failures, and really has never tested themselves, those are the ones that find these people extremely distasteful, because when they put themselves in comparison to these incredible people, they come up short.
Yeah, well, every ideal,
excuses.
Right. Every ideal is a judge.
Yes.
And so what's the answer to that? No ideals. That's a stupid suggestion.
Either.
No, it certainly doesn't, because then it leaves people without any meaning in their life. You know, so.
Well, I think it speaks to what you were talking about earlier, that we need adversity. We need difficulty, we need struggle. You need a weight to carry. And if you don't have any of this, you do not get your character tested. You do not advance in your own perception of who you are in this world, and how you engage with all the other people around you.
You don't call out what's best in you.
Yes.
And then you can't live without that. You need that. And the trick seems to be that voluntary acceptance of the adversity. See, that's one of the things that I think is core to the mythos of Christianity, because there's an idea that you should pick up your cross and stumble uphill. And that's really what that means, is that you set your eyes on some high level vision, the city of God on the hill, whatever that happens to be, you know, and then you take the burden, whatever burden you're capable of lifting, which is obviously going to be a burden of suffering, at least to some degree, and you carry that voluntarily. That's the trick, is that, and then you say, well, you need a purpose in your life. It's like, well, look, there's a lot of problems around you in the world. You have some problems even that bother you, right? Personally, they seem to call out to you those problems. Maybe those are your problems. Those are the problems you should solve. And those, I think, are the call to adventure. It's like, there's a problem. It bugs me. Okay, do something about it. That's your problem.
There's a certain amount that you could tolerate. I mean, I think it's like weight training. There's a certain amount where it becomes detrimental, where you've overtrained, your body's breaking down. There's a certain amount of problems that you have in your life that are extremely beneficial, because through going through these problems, sorting them out, you build your spirit, you build your character. And if you don't accomplish anything and you never encounter any problems, you are this gelatinous, soft, atrophied soul, and you don't have the intestinal fortitude or the spirit or the human potential has not been developed to the point where you can overcome adversity. The only way to overcome adversity is to face it.
So that optimum that you were talking about. So I've really been interested in the neurophysiology of the sense of meaning. Because
neurophysiology,
because the meaning, the feeling of meaning is an instinct.
Right.
It's not a thought. It's not a secondary consequence of rational processes. It's way deeper than that. It's something that drives rationality itself. So now
Does it vary amongst people?
Definitely. But it varies in this way, as far as I can tell. So imagine, as you said, that there's an optimal load. right? You exceed that and to your detriment.
Yes.
And you see that in the weight room. You pull a muscle, you'll hurt yourself.
Yeah.
You can injure yourself very badly, right? You can take yourself out for the count. But then if you work too little, well, then there's no gain in it. You have to find that thin edge where you're competent at what you're doing, but you're pushing yourself. That's going to be where meaning lies. That's what meaning tells people. It says you're on the edge where you're competent and out of undue danger, but pushing yourself enough so that you're continually developing. That's the instinct of meaning. And that looks to me like it's a consequence of the interaction between the right and the left hemispheres, and a consequence of the interaction between the negative emotion systems, anxiety and pain, that regulate you, that protect you from harm, and the exploratory and play systems that drive you forward. You want the exploratory and play systems to drive you forward, but then they're regulated by these negative emotions so you don't hurt yourself. And if you get that optimally right, then that's the point of maximal challenge. And that makes you really alert because your positive emotion is functioning. That's what's driving you forward. This is worth doing. And your negative emotions are alert too, saying, yeah, but be awake and be careful. And you know what that's like in the weight room. If you're lifting something that's at the edge of your ability, and you've got a spotter, you want to push and you can barely do it, and you want to make sure that you're not going to pull your arm down and rip the hell out of your muscle. But you're right on that edge, and that's the place of maximal gain. And that sense of meaning, that's what puts you on the border between chaos and order, right? Because too much order means you're just practicing what you already know. And then you stultify and stagnate. And too much chaos means you better look out because you're going to hurt yourself. You're pushing yourself beyond your limits. You stay right on that edge. That's where there's maximal meaning.
And you're wired find out for where that edge is
to push it.
To push it.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I recommend to young people, especially true for people in their 20s, is that you should push yourself beyond your limits of tolerance in your 20s to find out where it is. How much can you work? How disciplined can you become? Like, can you work 12 hours a day? Can you work 8 hours a day? Can you work 3 hours a day? Like, flat out. Where's your limit? And how much work can you do, and how much socialization? You should find out. Push yourself past and then back off to that point where it's optimally sustainable. One of the things I recommended to people, and I've had quite a few people actually tell me that they've done this, interestingly enough, I said, well, one thing you could aim at, if you had any sense when you were young, is to be you could be the most reliable person at your father's funeral. And so I think that's a good challenge. And I had a bunch of people come up to me in this last tour and tell me that that's exactly what they did. These were often young guys, like before 20. Said, my dad died suddenly, or, he died after years illness, and it was just taking me out. And no wonder, I said, I was listening to your lectures. You said you want to be the most reliable person at the funeral because everyone else is grieving, and what the hell else are you going to do? He said, that's what they tried to do, and that got him through it. So, that's part of that, picking up that load as far as I'm concerned. You get a little self-respect out of that too, in a real sense, right? Because, you're this sort of sad, suffering creature that's capable of a fair bit of malevolence. But if you find out that you can carry a heavy load and take care of yourself and have a little left over for some other people, then you can wake up at 3 a.m. and think, well, man, I could be worse.